Okay, it is about 8:31 and it is Wednesday, October the 2nd, 2019, and welcome to the fall quarter at Rasmussen College, and more specifically, welcome to J115 Introduction to Corrections. And my name is Richard Wright, and I am your instructor for the next 11 weeks. 11 weeks. And as you probably gathered, that there aren't very many 11-week courses. Courses are being reduced to 5.5 weeks, and this course is not an exception because it is one of the last courses that will be converted to 5.5, which I was alerted that it's projected that the next time this course is taught, which will be in the winter, I'm sorry, in the winter quarter, which starts January 2020, that it will be a 5.5 course. So I have taught this course for the last 4 or 5 years, and all year round in the quarters, and it has been 11 weeks. And so be very attentive to the things that I'm going to share with you today. I have a goal, and that is to help you to achieve student success. And this particular course requires that I provide one lecture to you for 11 weeks, which could be today. However, because of my commitment to student engagement, I have lectures throughout the quarter, and your schedule is generally week 1, week 2, and then from that point, all even weeks, week 4, 6, 8, and 10. Today's lecture will go longer than normal because I'm going to share something with you that that you will learn about me. As many of you, most of you, are new students, and you really don't know me, and you're going to learn about me. This is usually one of the courses where I first meet students, and students subsequent to completing this course will then run across me again in Introduction to Criminal Law, in Drugs and Crime, Contemporary Issues to Criminal Justice, and several other courses. But this one is the starting point. And so I'm going to spend some time, very, very, very critical that you pay close attention to the requirements for this course, and that you understand that I'm going to cover the very, 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 very important course project, which basically consists of, I think it's 4 weeks, week 2, week 4, week 7, and then the final is week 9. And I will be covering the requirements today in full to let you know what is expected as far as completing this assignment. Students usually run into problems with this course in terms of these lectures, and my attendance for students is oftentimes the way it is. No or either few attendance students attend because of the fact that students understand that they don't get any extra points, or these lectures don't count directly towards their grades. But I take issue with that because of the fact that I tell students that attendance at lectures help you increase your opportunity to get a higher grade, and it also helps you develop an understanding of the systems of this school in terms of the system that we use for the LMS, which is Blackboard Learn, and you were introduced to that. Those of you not familiar with it, during your orientation. So let me get started by sharing my screen so that you'll be able to see the things that I'm going to be talking to you about. All right. So it's going to be a little, like I said again, I'm going to be a little slower. Move my picture out of the way. So right off the bat, one of the first things that you should see on the course homepage is my name. Second thing you will see is my all-important phone number. Now that phone number is actually my office. It is my cell phone, and I make it available to students. Most professors use a Google number, or they'll not give their cell phone, but I use my cell phone. I even use it on Facebook as well. And so I advise students that you can always reach me, because my phone is always near me. In fact, it is actually right near the head of my bed when I go to sleep, and it's not turned off. The volume is not down. About the only time the volume might be down is when I'm in a lecture like now, or it might be down when I'm at church. It might be down when I'm in a meeting, or in some place where I need not to have my phone to ring. So, but most of the time you can reach me. And so I give this statement, which it means what it says. You're going to discover, as my children who live in my house and all of my students discover, that I am a man who says what he means and means what he says. And that it is very important that you understand what I'm talking about. Students can, and I read this, students can feel free to call me, text me, or email me any hour of the day, except the 25th hour of the day. Now that is important for you to understand. You try to figure that one out, and I do encourage you to utilize that. That's why it starts off right away, so that you're not lost about communication, because one of the things that a lot of professors do is they lay out the parameters for communicating with them. And it means what it says. So if you call me, you can call me anytime except the 25th hour of the day. You can text me. Now, when you text me, be aware, don't worry about the data and all of that with my phone. I don't know about yours, but I have unlimited text. I also accept downloads or either attachments of phone numbers, not phone numbers, of information that you want me to see as well. But when you do text me, make sure you include your name. Of course, the phone number will be in there, and the course that you are in, i.e. Introduction to Corrections. You don't have to say section 1, because I only do one section of that. So Introduction to Corrections, and also provide what you want me to know, assignments. Now, and then you can email me any hour of the day. Now, I provide for you the course email in the course already, but I also have personal email, which you'll see in there. And if you look at the student lounge and you look at the bottom of that, where I put the cell phone, not the cell phone number, I put the email address, and my personal email address can be used as well. Now, I tell students that it is very important that you keep in contact with me. If you have a problem, if you have an issue, let me know right away. Let's say if there's a 911 call, which is something that happens, which it has happened with students in the past, or you're having some problem that you want me to know right away, email is probably the worst way to reach me because of the fact that I will be slower getting it. The key then is to text me or just simply to call me. I am not gonna, as I was telling one student, literally, she had a phobia about calling and got nervous when she talked to professors. I said, well, that's unfortunate for me because I love to talk to my students. If you do get involved in a discussion with me, you will discover that I like to talk to you and I like to share details and information. So I'm taking that up so you understand. Rubrics. Notice that it's highlighted. If you want to achieve student success in any course that I teach, pay close attention to the rubrics. And so in this course, the rubrics are embedded in your grade book, number one, but that's not the first place that you will find it, because that's how you can see that I have given you a grade. And the way that you do it is you'll see at the bottom of the rubric, or the section of the rubric, feedback. And it will provide information there that will give you details about what you did good and what you did wrong. The key is to follow it very carefully. And there are certain things in there that you don't do, which you'll see regarding the requirements for certain sources that are used in papers. The second thing is APA. Now, we go a long ways into helping our students to understand the importance of APA. And there's a lot of resources available that I will just share with you briefly that are there to help you understand APA, including tutors. We have our student tutors who are trained in how to help you navigate the troubling waters that many students face concerning APA. And APA is a system that is, as long as you're in this school, so far as I've been able to operate, and I've been here 8 years as of yesterday, that it is the system that's used to provide citations and references, primarily cover sheets and Roman 12 font, and then the formatting for how the cover sheet should be done. There's noodle information to help you and guide you. There are systems. So APA is very, very, very important, and you will lose points every time. Now, you're going to discover that when I grade you on APA right off the bat in your rubrics, that at the last comment before I might put in a comment if you're late and take away points, is that if you use sources like Wikipedia, you will lose points. Those are not reliable resources. And then also, you lose points is if you don't have the proper APA citations in the body and, not or, and references at the end. And so it is very, very, very important. APA was shared with you in your orientation. And again, as you struggle with APA, I will reach a point where I will refer you out for tutoring, and I encourage you to use that tutoring because of the fact it will help you. Let me say this. If you put the citations in the body and leave the references out, you're still going to lose your 5 points. Students say, well, why don't I get some of the points? Because half right is wrong. That's the answer to that question. So you're either going to get it right or you're going to get it wrong. It's like when you do a true-false question or either multiple choice. You're either going to pick the appropriate one or not. And so APA is very, very, very important, and I will again, share with you a place where you can find more details on APA using your Resources tab, which is at the top right. Here it is right there. Why not just take a look at it right now? So if you look at your Resources tab, you see one of the earlier things is it helps you to library that helps you to find information, books, images, videos, and also you will discover from the APA guide. There's you click on that, APA Academic Writer. Grammarly. Grammarly is a process that you have that's available to you that we will be running every paper through. I will run every paper through, and I will be checking to see your content if you have enough critical thinking, which we're going to talk about in detail, in your papers. We don't want just copy and pasting. We want you to have your analysis of what these items are. And so I'm going to, because this is a course that a lot of times students don't do the Grammarly right, I'm going to share with you more details. But each of you have a Grammarly account that is available for free, or I should just say it's incorporated in your fees and everything that you pay. And you can just put your mouse here, click on it, and it'll give you instructions on how to do it. Then your Noodle guide is used to help you with formatting as well. And then the writing guide discusses issues from discussion points to outlines to PowerPoints and research papers to help you. And then there's a whole lot of other resources as well. All right. So you have guides by subject and topic for your program of criminal justice itself, and you will be able to see that as well. Of course, if you want to make an appointment with a librarian, this tells you how to do that. It tells you also who they are. In our case, these are the people we have. Dennis Johnson. This is the librarian for our program. Okay, so that's who you'll communicate with, not any of these other four, but Dennis Johnson. And then we also have Bethany Marston, who is a Learning Center coordinator as well, that will help you as well. So we have a whole lot of stuff. There's an academic integrity video, which I'm going to share with you, which talks about the actual issues concerning the courses that you take. The transferable skills, I'm going to cover that later, but just to share with you a little bit, these 6 transferable skills are skills that we've identified that employers want you to have. And I already talked to you about one of them, and that is critical thinking. And you can see, if you take a look at this, let me move this out of the way again. Critical thinking, improved thinking, including problem solving and creativity by applying intellectual standards such as clarity in your papers, precision, logic, and reflection. And then, so critical thinking is so important. It is my favorite of the transferable skills. I'm a natural critical thinker because I went to law school, and it has prepared me even before critical thinking was used as a topic, because we studied under what we call the Socratic method, where there was a series of questions given to us to get our juices flowing. And then there is digital fluency. Digital fluency is, and you know, these things are internal. The first 3 that you deal with on an individual basis. The second 3, you deal with collaboration with everybody that you come in contact with. Digital fluency, effective employing and understanding of digital tools to express ideas in appropriate context. That is, being able to conduct and utilize the LMS, which is your Blackboard, understanding how to use WebEx, and how to use Word, how to use all the various systems that are utilized. You're looking at a man who is 69 years old, who when he came out of law school, that would be me, 1978, excuse me, you will discover that there was no digital fluency at all. There's no ebooks. You learn how to use ebooks. I think ebooks are awesome. I have learned to appreciate them. And then also on my phone, I have all kinds of apps, depending on whether you have an Apple phone, and I'm an Android person, and I utilize those apps, including my textbooks from my courses that I teach, and you can do the same with yourself. So you're going to use digital fluency everywhere now. Even police reports, even all kinds of reports now are digital, and you use all kinds of systems. Information literacy, recognizing when you need to have information to support your information, your details in your papers and statements. Possessing the ability to first locate it, that is how to conduct research, evaluate it, and that is to take it and transfer it and make it so that you can use it effectively to make a point and as needed. Now, information literacy, as I already referred says right off the bat, do not use sources that are not very good. Probably the best way to use this is minimize your use of Google and all these other searches while you're in school. Use the library. Use the information resources that are available to you as a student. And then next we have communication. Communication. It is so important that you understand, this is our definition of communication, displaying capability in writing, reading, and oral communication, understanding of nonverbal language. So you have to be a good communicator, and that's what employers are looking for, and that's what you're going to be exercising as you complete the assignments in not just this course, but other courses that you take as well. Diversity and teamwork. Well, demonstrating awareness and empathy. I am often referred to as Mr. Empathy because I'm a very empathetic individual. You will learn more later in this lecture at the end why I'm such an empathetic individual, because usually people who are empathetic are people who have been through something and can appreciate the fact that other people have issues that they face, and not assume. Just because I see you're not doing well in the course, I don't assume that you're a poor student. I might reach out to you, and don't be surprised if you get a phone call from me. A lot of professors won't do that. I will call you. I will text you. I will email you. And usually I won't text you a lot unless I see that you've given me permission to text, or either you have it listed in the school system that allows us to text. Not everybody does that, but the point of the matter is that we make sure that you understand empathy while working collaboratively with people from diverse backgrounds and perspectives. You're going to find that's the way the world operates. You're going to find, especially in criminal justice, that you're going to deal with people who are different from you, who look different from you. I've been introduced to various individuals who, because of their way they were raised and lived, didn't know anything except what they saw in movies and television about African Americans. And so I have had to deal with some situations that were not intentional by those individuals, but because of the fact that they are not cognizant. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that people don't look like us all the time. People don't always agree with our point of view. We might have different political views. That's okay. To each its own. You speak a different language. You celebrate holidays different. You worship different, or you don't worship, or you you eat foods that are different from those that I might eat. You dress differently, those kinds of things. So we are a country, or as a world right now, of diversity. People from all over the world are here, particularly, as I usually say, our country is made up of immigrants. Unless you are a Native American, it is offensive to use the term Indian to a Native American. And people should know that. And that is why some of the symbols have been under attack, like the redskin. We had Chief Illini here in Illinois. They were all determined that they were offensive to Native Americans. And so we don't want to offend anybody. There are people who have different sexual preferences, gay, straight. There are individuals who lifestyle is different from yours. So be respectful of that. So how you'll say, well, I'm online, I won't run across that too much. Yes, you will. Number one, you're going to do projects where you meet different people in your interviews and so forth. When you begin to work, you're obviously going to work with individuals from different backgrounds, and you're going to work with as teams, different individuals, corrections, prisons, jails, probation, parole. You might work with detectives, you might work with police officers who are street cops. You'll work with attorneys, prosecution, and defense. You'll work with judges from various backgrounds and perspectives. And so the key thing, in this particular course, right off the bat, in this course, we respect the posts and positions that people take in their discussion forum. You won't see the papers. I will. And I don't hold against you because you write something that I disagree with. I will, though, say you need to support it with citations, references, conduct some research. It is very, very, very important that you understand that. Research is very critical, very critical. And so you're going to respect the backgrounds of people. You're not going to use poor language and things of that nature. So we'll talk about more details in the discussion forum. Ethics and professional responsibility is the final one. Ethics are so important, and this is what we define them as a college: understanding and exhibiting the principles of conduct and professional behavior which impact a greater good to the world. That's what we aim to do here as instructors, as staff members, and we pass that on to you to learn to do that as students, so that it will become who you are when you become a professional and when you leave that school, because employers want ethical individuals. And Lord knows, and you know, that criminal justice professionals, especially law enforcement, under severe attack because of some ethical issues that take place. And so it is important for you to recognize and appreciate those things while you're in school. You're going to be taking tests and quizzes, and you're not going to be using books. You're not going to use notes. You're not going to use any of that. It's going to be as if you were sitting in the room and you have a proctor, and that proctor will be there to be able to determine that you're not cheating or using materials on a particular test. So it is very, 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 very important that you understand how that works. And so you want to make sure that you do that. But we stand firmly as a school to do things for the greater good of the world, and we teach you that, to apply that in your employment opportunities for your future careers. And there are various professional responsibilities. As a lawyer I was many years, we had a code of professional responsibility that we were to operate under. And it was very interesting. One of the ones that was always very interesting was you don't even give the appearance of impropriety. That means that even if you're not really improper, but the appearance, and the appearance is determined by the reasonable person in the position operating in the role. And that's what we were as lawyers. Doctors have the Hippocratic Oath. Accountants have it. You're going to have it as correction officers, as jailers. You're going to have it as probation officers, parole officers, caseworkers, social workers. Whatever you do, you're going to be subjected to that. So those are our transferable skills, which now I've taken the time to go over them, and I won't go as much into them in terms of when I get to the actual, let's see, when I get to the actual syllabus. So there's questions that ask you, how will employers know I possess these skills? And it tells you what I just said. It says throughout their program, you'll develop transferable skills, starting with courses like this. Actually, you should have started with your J100 as well. You know what that one is, Introduction to Criminal Justice. And then as part of a capstone course, which is a course that you'll be taking, and it's called capstone because it's near the time you graduate, you'll have the chance to demonstrate, review on these skills, and share your skills with potential employers as you continue with your learning. And then you can learn more about transferable skills by looking at and clicking on this link, because there's a guide. In the guide of Rasmussen, there's a section committed and dedicated, as there is a video as well. So that's what I want to say about transferable skills. All right. So now let's go back and let's get into the course homepage again, because I've got quite a bit to cover there. Let me move this up here. I've told you about your resources tab as well. So now this is repetitious here, but it reminds you of things that are important that I've already said. So you'll be able to read that over. Advisors, talk about the frequently asked questions about tutorers versus peer mentors. Student Success Guide, which tells you something that'll help you. And then these little things, you can click on them and you can find it. I've already kind of taken you to this, but again, if you click on guides to your library and learning center resources, you will see here that, and you'll see this in your video that I'm going to be giving you in a minute. If you click on these and cover over these and click on them, it'll lead you to that. Did you not know that there's a guide for each of your areas? Criminal justice has its own. So it's broken down by school of. So you go down to School of Justice Studies, and there you are. And you learn a lot of information. You see, I was talking about Dennis Johnson earlier, who is the librarian that can help you as well. And there's so many details in here to help you deal with the School of Justice Studies Guide, tutoring page, and all of these different things. So this is, every school has its own. So that's what you utilize there. So then Grammarly, which I talked about, all of these are interactive tools to help you be successful. One thing about this school that you will learn is that we are proactive in terms of helping students to achieve student success. Tutoring assistance, I will say this to you, covering all of that, is that there are various ways you can work with a tutor. There's various reasons why you might want a tutor. Some students always have in their minds that the only time you need a tutor is when you're having trouble with your grades. That's not true. Tutors can also help you to produce better assignments. And so we have our student tutors you should be aware of. These are students who have been trained It's part of their work study program. It helps them with their education expenses here at Rasmussen. And then, and if I say Rasmussen, same school. Anyway, the truth of the matter is that tutors are well qualified to help you, and some of them are in classes that you are already taking with. Most of them aren't in this class because this is usually a starting class, but there are students who have been in this class, and they are peer tutors and mentors and are there to help you because they, as we say, been there, done that. And then I included my own, some articles which are very beneficial. If you click on these, you can see the PDFs that are self-explanatory that help you as well. And then there's a critical thinking video, which I just finished completing that. Rubrics, as I said earlier, are located in each course and written assignment and course project. That's where you will find them. Your discussion posts, we use a generic discussion post, but the key thing with discussion posts as far as grades is concerned is that your discussion posts, in terms of, I'm talking about only content right this moment, not time, but content is that they demonstrate that you have conducted some study, analysis, and research about the information that you are seeking to answer, and that you have not just said a little comment like "good post" or "I liked your post," "I enjoyed your post." If you do, you can say that, but elaborate on it. I don't require, even though you'll see it in here, that I don't require citations and references to be included in discussion posts. Some professors do, but I'm not one of them, and so you can. I do like you, though, to reply to more than one post, and you will discover that reply posts are due on Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, and you'll discover that initial posts were due yesterday, which was Tuesday, for the first week, October the 1st, and that if you're entering a discussion post tonight, it is 1 day late, and that you will lose 1 point for each day that your discussion post is submitted late. Also, you will lose points if it doesn't contain the information of quality and quantity of information that you have there. And I don't run your post through Grammarly, but if I did, sometimes some of you guys would get hit because you want to make sure that you're not only taking information from sources, but also that you're commenting on those sources as well, applying critical thinking, as I've already shared with you as one of the critical, critical skills, or one of our transferable skills. And critical thinking, as I said, is my favorite one. If you master that one, you will be well off. And then the other thing about discussion posts is that with your initial posts and reply posts due, as I said it earlier, Tuesdays and Saturdays, you will discover that if you submit your discussion posts late, each day you'll lose a point. Now, if you just submit your discussion posts for your initial post and your reply post Saturday night by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, you will lose points for the late initial post, and presuming that the content is based on and satisfying the rubric and the information that's requested in the discussion forum for that particular week, then you will lose points for that, but you will get all your points for that Saturday post. Now, let me say this. I do encourage more than one discussion reply post, because what it does is it makes the discussion forum better as well. The other thing I'm going to say to you, and you need to get this, if you submit your discussion post Sunday, you will lose every point. You will get 0 because the forum is over and we're heading toward a new week starting that next day, which is Monday. And so the discussion forum is over. Now, if you submit your initial posts within the parameters of the deadline, Saturday night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard, and your reply post, and then you submit your reply post on Sunday, I have been nice enough with my students to deduct a point. I could technically say, no, I'm not accepting it, but I do that. But I will knock off a point if for being late from that particular point. All deals are off if it's submitted that following Monday. So that's what I want to say about that. So right now I'm really kind of moving along, even though I got a lot of material, because I'm covering a lot of stuff that I usually cover when I get to the syllabus. This is the link that if you know this link, I know you know this link because you're in the class. And that's the only way that you can get into the live lecture. Not the recorded lecture, but the live lecture. And there is, it talks about what's happening right now, the open house, and again it says 8:30 Central. So if you're in a different time zone, you got to think about what time is it in the Central Standard Time Zone, and then 10 o'clock, or maybe after that, a little after that. Last night I went over about 15 minutes, but I'm taking a lot of time. In this course, it might be a little longer because of the time that I spend with the course project that will help you to complete this project successfully. The lectures take place after tonight every other Wednesday, starting with week 2. Okay? And so you see week 2, week 4, which is next week is week 2, week 6, week 8, week 10. All you have to do is remember that. And then the recordings, there's nothing under here yet, but tonight there will be a recording here. And what I do with my recordings, which by the way, those of you who get this email saying that there are issues with getting recordings from WebEx, that will not affect you because of the fact that you will have your recordings already converted. I take the recordings, and it takes about an hour or 2 for me to do it, but I do it because it benefits my students and makes it easier for you to use to access the lectures. I convert them to MP4s in the system that I have here. Again, that's using digital fluency that I'm able to do very well. And then I upload them to YouTube, which almost everybody has access to or an account. And the link I give you leads you directly to be able to find the lecture itself. And so it will be posted down here, all 6 of them, from week first 1 to these next 5 from here. All right. Now, I do want to say to you, take the time to pay attention to the lectures. One of the things that I put in here is I highly, going back to the instructor information, highly, do you see highly all caps? Recommend that you listen to each weekly lecture for important information. I've already said, I stress that. But you know what? If you're not listening to the lectures at all, you're not going to see this anyway. And then, you know, I can tell when a student doesn't take the time to look at the lecture and thoroughly look at the lecture, because I go into so much detail in the lecture as if I'm in the room with you when I'm talking to you. And even if there are none or fewer students, I'm able to talk to you because I may not see my audience. I did radio for many years and still do now. And so I'm accustomed to being able to communicate. So it is important that you take the time to look at these lectures. Okay. So now I want to give you a few resources. You can click on these and look at it. APA, I've already talked about the writing process. We're going to go to the welcome announcement, but right now I'm going to share with you this link here, and I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it to a browser, and I'm going to paste and go. And I'm going to take off my headphones so make sure that the closed caption is on. It is. So now let's go back and start from the beginning. Let's go while it comes up. Okay, now let me start it up for you. Okay.
What is academic integrity? Academic integrity is making decisions in your academic life that are based on honesty, trust, fairness, responsibility, and respect. This means being honest in the work you do, while respecting the work that others do. So what is cheating? Cheating means distributing or receiving answers or information by any means other than those expressly permitted by an assignment's requirements or an instructor. Some examples of cheating include asking fellow students for answers or copying answers during the test, using notes, devices, or materials during the test that your instructor has not approved, purchasing papers from websites or other sources, copying your classmate's work, assisting the classmate in misconduct, and other violations as noted in the academic integrity policy that can be found in all course syllabi. Always ask your professor if it's okay to use notes during the test or to work together with classmates on an assignment or quiz. Now let's talk about plagiarism. Plagiarism means using another individual's work without giving them credit or taking another person's work and claiming it as your work. Some examples of plagiarism are turning in an assignment that someone else wrote, copying words or ideas from someone else. This can be a library resource, course textbook, internet resource, or other material without giving the original creator credit. Failing to put quoted works in quotation marks, or using someone else's ideas in your essays, but changing a few of the words to make it sound like the words are your own. Plagiarism is not just about written words and ideas. It's possible to plagiarize images, graphs, coding, or video as well. So how can you avoid plagiarism? Cite your sources, both in the body of your paper as in-text citations and on your references page. Whenever you want to use words, images, media, or ideas that were created by another person, you should cite that person appropriately as the source of that information.
But how does academic integrity relate to the work world? Is it just a college thing?
No. Integrity in the workplace starts with good practices and skills built while you are a student. Would you turn in a project document to your manager as your own when someone else wrote it? Not if you want to keep your job. Individuals can be reprimanded or even fired from their job for plagiarism. Following academic integrity guidelines while you are in school builds those skills and ethical practices that carry through to the workforce.
Okay, I understand how they're connected, but what do I do if I need more help?
If you have questions on the academic integrity policy, consult your course syllabus, talk with your instructor or dean, and if you need assistance with APA citation style or how to avoid plagiarism, contact the Rasmussen library team through our live chat or schedule a research appointment on our library website or through the resources tab of your course. If you would like APA tutoring, schedule an appointment with one of our peer tutors on the course resources tab.
Okay, that is APA. Let's get that back in here. Oops.
Give me a second here. My headphones, I got to stick them back in so we can, here we go. So now,
let's get that out of the way. Okay. Let's close that one out. So you see how this video there, and it's there for you to see, and it's also under your resources tab as well. But this one is closed caption, so you get a chance to see the information that you need to see there. All right, so now let's get into the announcements. You already have seen these, or should have seen them or read them by now, particularly the welcome announcement, which the first paragraph gives you some more information that you probably learned from the student lounge. But I do point out to you, without going through each of these that are highlighted, make sure you read these. Follow the information that it's telling you to do to help you, so that you understand. And it'll guide you in terms of how to be successful. And again, make sure you use your course mail for personal communication. But I've also told you other ways. But as far as email, make sure you use your course mail and reply to my welcome, as some of you already have. And then the syllabus, which we're going to go over in a few minutes, and it covers the academic integrity policy, the attendance policy, and assignment submission policy, which I'll talk about a few of those there. Then your calendar is your friend. It gives you important dates. It tells you when the course starts, tells you when assignments are due, and it tells you also, people, when the last day of this course is. All right? And you can download it, you can print it, and it helps you. And I'm going to each week show you the course calendar for that particular week. And then if you have general course questions, these are questions that anybody can answer, but not private answers, but public answers. You can post them there. That is found under the discussion tab, and you'll see general course questions, and you can put that information in there. I've already had a few of those. I don't know if it's in this course, but I have had some this week in other classes. The resources tab, I've already shown you. It's up at the right top, right corner of your the course, and it's right up above, right up about there. It is right there, and you can find valuable resources and information. And then your report tab, I don't use that. That's so that you can see your grade book. And again, I remind you that your grade book contains information. And there are students that say to me, I don't see feedback in my my grade book. It's under each particular section of the rubric, and you want to make sure that you look at, because I provided for you to let you know about it. Okay, so you get feedback from me on every assignment that you complete, except quizzes. You don't get feedback from me with that, because your grades are entered automatically. And then this reminds you about the lectures and when weekly, when they take place, and it tells you every other Wednesday, and you already know the schedule of that. Okay. So this announcement will be available to you throughout the whole course. So now let me take you to this week. And we're not going to go into details on these assignments. I'm just going to give you the format so you can see. My announcements are very detailed to give you information as to what is expected of you for that week. So you can look at that, and then when you get to the assignments themselves, you'll be familiar with it. So this week in the textbook, chapter 1, which, by the way, each week you will receive corresponding PowerPoints, not that we use in the lecture, but that will given to you to help you with your assignments. It's an outline of the chapter, basically. And then there are some activities that you can complete that help you understand. This week, it's an introduction to the correction system and a historical perspective. And this also tells you, again, about your readings and about your lectures every other Wednesday beginning next week. Remember, though, notice what it says. That don't mean that you shouldn't be here today. Some people stop and look at this. No, you had to continue all the way down and read the whole announcement, because that's the general lectures that are 8:30 beginning next week. Then the discussion assignment for this week is justification for punishment. I've already talked about discussion posts. They'll do again Tuesday night, which was due last night, and then your reply posts are due Saturday. Finally, there's a written assignment, elements of correctional system, and then there is a time quiz. I do recommend that when you do the quiz, you try to do the quiz at the end of studying all the material. Put your stuff away, because academic integrity policy says this is a closed book quiz. You'll have 10 minutes to complete 10 questions, and that's the way it works. All right, and all of these assignments that I'm talking about here, elements of correctional system and the quiz, are due by 11:59 p.m. every Sunday. And then I'm completing a course review of the course project tonight as well, an introduction. That's not an assignment, but I put it in there so that you will be aware of it. And so it's going to help you. It's going to help you. Next week will be the first week that you actually have a written portion, and it'll be the shortest one that you do. And then this reminds you about the open house, which is taking place at the present time. Okay. And then finally, starting strong. I encourage you to start strong and finish strong. And then I share my motto, adversity is the springboard to success, which you will learn what that is all about at the end of the lecture tonight. So now let's go and take a look at the course calendar. The course calendar, you can access it at the top of your paper because you don't have these tools. These are instructor tools. So you'll see in here that your reading assignment, if you click on it, it tells you what you have to look at. But I've already told you what module, or rather what chapters. Your initial post, and then this is the open house that's taking place tonight. Notice that next week there's also one, and then after that, then we're on our even weeks. Notice reply post due this Saturday the 5th, and then your written assignment and quiz are due by the 6th. I put course project again. There's no written assignment for it, and I know students are going to send me messages, but that's why it is important to pay attention to the lectures. And then each week it goes in kind, and you could go all the way through this, and you can copy it, and then you could go all the way to November, and you'll see all the way through to November. And then this course concludes December 13th, which is a Friday the 13th, which is actually what happened last quarter. Friday the 13th in September, the course concluded. So a lot of people get messed up because they think that because they're accustomed to doing Saturday and Sunday posting of final assignments, that when they get to this last week, no. But I'll be talking about that again. And my students are well prepared in terms of this. That's why it's so important, again, to look at the lecture and listen to it. Okay, so that's it for that. So now let's go to the syllabus real quick. We're going to spend less time than I normally do because I've covered a whole lot. The syllabus provides my name, my number, and it provides some reminder information that you already should know from the course homepage. It tells you this course, tells you the textbook, it tells you the course requirements, it talks about discussion posts. We've already covered that, so I'm not going to spend time going over that, but you can read that over again. It tells you, again, that your initial posts, when they're due, and it tells you there what I've already told you, and then it tells you when your reply post, and then for week 11, I already told you that. Your written assignments, it tells you that Sundays by midnight or 11:59 p.m. and then for week 11, the last day of class. This breaks down what you're going to be doing in this course. Notice again, lectures are not included as a course requirement, but I encourage it. It's important. It'll save you a lot of stress, and it'll help you correct errors that you will, and it'll help you to maximize your points. Check your course schedule frequently for assigned due dates. Discussion posts, I've already talked about them. Written assignments, and then there's 5 quizzes throughout the course and 10 questions that are timed that cover that particular week. And then there is a course project, which I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes. The final exam will be 50 multiple choice questions, and the test is comprehensive. Here's the best way to be prepared for that. Remember how well you did in each of the 5 before that, and then the final exam. So it'll be basically the same information again, maybe a little bit more, but that's pretty much how you score well with the 50 multiple choice questions, which will be given in the final week. And then I provided this information again. Now it breaks down and tells you what the breakdown is in terms of percentage and points. Here I want to take the time to say to you, my goal is to get you into A all the way down to B-. Never call me, ask me, text me, email me, Professor Wright, Dr. Wright, Mr. Wright, how do I get a C in your class? I'm not going to answer you, because I don't help you produce C's. I don't produce C students. I specialize in producing A and B students. Now, I'm very respectful of your time. Like I said again, this first week is one that just kind of like sets up the next 11 weeks. And that's why there's going to be a lot of time that I'm taking with this, because I anticipate questions because of the number of years that I've taught this course. So A and B, Dean's List and Honor Roll. Don't ask me about anything beyond that, because I won't answer you. And then these are some things that you're going to get from me. I will make every effort to complete this last bullet point to make sure all grades are submitted by midnight after their due date. So for week 1, your week 1 assignments are due on the 6th, which is this Sunday coming up. I will make every effort to have your assignments graded by the 11th, at the end of the day. So at the start of the 12th, and that's the parameters that we will get your grades in. I will do that. There are times when I fall behind, but I try not to. But I'm going to make a concerted effort. Transferable skills, I've already talked about that. Attendance policy, I'm skipping over that. Let me talk to you about the late assignment submission policy. You will discover that the school gives you 7 days to submit late assignments. Each day that your assignment is late, you will lose 10%, starting with that Monday, for example. And I'm not talking about discussion posts. I already told you about that. I'm talking about written assignments. So let's say you submit the perfect paper on Monday, then you're going to get, the highest you can get is 90%. And it goes down each of the weeks. So it says 7, but if you pay count, you'll recognize that by the time you get to the 4th day, that you're at 60%. And look at what 60% is. 60% is an F. So you really will have got a failing grade for that paper. So don't count on those 7 days. I always remind students that that's a trick that students trap that you can fall into. And so, and that's the way it works. Now, don't apply. The students may be asked to complete an alternate assignment. I don't do that because I have too many students and to grade, and it would be unfair because I'm trying to get everybody's grades back as timely as I can within the parameters of the requirement that the school asked me to complete. Now, next, pay attention to this. Instructors that may waive the late penalty in the case of extenuating circumstances, as I determine it. The way that I know that is if you follow what I said earlier, if you reach out to me and let me know that you're having a problem contemporaneously. Students will email me sometimes and let me know, but you know, it depends on the situation. You might want to text me or call me with that information so that I'll have it right away. But I do remind students that if I do determine extenuating circumstances, then when you submit your assignment late, attach a note to the assignment letting me know that that I said, oh, I approved an extension. Sometimes I'll have a deadline date on it. Depends on what the situation and circumstances are. I determine extenuating circumstances on a case-by-case basis. What is not extenuating circumstances is vacations. Planned vacations are not extenuating circumstances. That's a time management issue. What is extenuating circumstance, for example, is maybe a death or illness. You might have a situation where you have, we have had the hurricane down in Florida for our students, down in other parts of the country where there's been storms, and there has been extensions we've given to students to complete work. Also, if you have an outage, but don't lie. Do not lie. I don't want your obituaries. I don't want your letters from your doctors or from your mother or from your friend or anybody to tell me what it is. I remember we're operating ethically. Remember we talked about one of transferable skills, and so we're going to believe what you're doing. We don't put a camera in your house where you do your assignments and take your test to see that you're not cheating. We don't do that. It'll catch up with you if you do, and you can end up being booted from the school and or receiving a failing grade. So extenuating circumstances is determined by me. I am very, very, very empathetic when it comes to considering student circumstances and situations. But let me know. I've got to know. I'm not Karnak. Well, that's dating you, dating myself. This is like there was a guy who was supposed to be a soothsayer, or either we had a crystal ball. He had a crystal ball, but I don't have any of those things. I'm counting on you to tell me so that we can come together in terms of dealing with those issues. One of the issues that definitely is extenuating circumstances is I have students every quarter who are in the reserves and the military, and they're on duty and they don't have access to internet, and I don't want them to try to do something that compromises. I had one student that the whole course that he completed was in Afghanistan, and so that student had wide latitude in terms of late submissions. In fact, he didn't have any late submissions, and then he had other things that he ended up having to do at the end of the course. That wasn't in this course. He was getting ready to graduate and did graduate. And so extenuating circumstances is determined by me. Dealing with other issues, I'm going to skip over the incomplete issue. Again, the academic integrity policy, take the time to read it, but I've already talked about pretty much how that works. And so with that being said, I want to go into the module for this week real quick. All right. And then I'm going to spend some time, and I see my time is already running, but that's all right. Just stick with it because it's going to benefit you here. Your written assignments, and I'm showing you how it works, is that it tells you when you click on assignments, the topic of the assignment, and it gives you, the requirements for the assignment. But the all-important rubric is attained by clicking on the assignment itself. It tells you the due date, and then it tells you to view the rubric. You click on View the Rubric, which is found here, and it's also in your course. And it will provide details concerning the 4 components of corrections. All right, and it tells you what this is. So the 4 components of corrections, pay attention to this right now because it's going to be repeated again. There are only 4 components of correction, only 4. Probation, parole, jail, and prison. That's it, period. And when we talk about the course project, you're going to see why I said this. So you're going to provide details as to how each of these components fit into the correctional system. And then you're going to write it in paragraph form, double space, not single space. People, you will lose points if you submit single space. I'm telling you up front. And it meets the 2-page minimum length. Already one student has had one submitted and he lost points because he didn't satisfy the 2 pages. And the reason for the 2 pages is not because we are being dogmatic about 2 pages. It is believed that in order to adequately address these issues properly, you will need 2 pages. That doesn't count the cover page, and it doesn't count the reference page. And then it talks about APA formatted and title pages and stuff, and then it reminds you too about what I said about Wikipedia. So that's every week. You're going to see that this section down here and this section down here is always going to be the same from day 1 all the way through, including the course projects. It's the quality, content, and accuracy of information that gives us specifics for each assignment, which is different. So then you submit your assignment. So then let's go back. So you got a discussion assignment. I already told you about that. And then your quiz. I am not going to click on this because it will open up the quiz and you will see the questions. I'm not doing that. And so it tells you, be aware that each of the quiz consists of 10 multiple choice questions. It is timed, 10 minutes. So 1 minute per question. Pay close attention to what the multiple choice question is asking you to do. And during the exam, you'll be given notification about 5 minutes, a 5-minute warning, a 1-minute warning, and a 30-second warning. And so once time expires, whether you've done 1 question or 2 questions or 3 questions, it's going to enter your grade. And by starting this exam, you agree to abide by the academic misconduct policy set forth in the syllabus, and failure to do so could result in being expelled from this course. And that's what I said earlier. Okay? So now, let's get to the lesson content. And every week, I'll pretty much cover this during the lectures. But it gives the objectives of what we're going to cover, and we're not going to go over these this week. Starting next week, we're going to start covering them. And you'll see the reading, again repeated, section 1, which is chapter 1. The criminal justice system is down below. The course project introduction is down below. We're going to do that. And the discussion, I already talked about that, the quiz. And then it talks about the fact that how to get tutoring support, which I've covered. So introduction to correction system, and I'm going to not talk about what's in here, but normally I will every week, okay? And then part of that is the historical perspective. And so then what you can do when you get to here is you can allow this to open up, and it will tell you, you know, an interactive thing, and it gives you answers to, you click on it, and it tells you all the way from 1780 to 20th century corrections once you click on them. Okay, so you can do that on your own. Again, I'm not going to do that. All right, so those are the parameters. So now, before I wrap up and tell you what I want to tell you at the end, and I know we're going to go at least probably now to 10:30 now because of the way that I've taken the time here, so it's going to go longer. It's going to be basically a 2 hour, but it's important. So now, pay close attention. You will have a course project in this class. It is so important that you understand week 1 what the parameters of this assignment entails. I will take the time to break it down for you, and then I will make some recommendations to you as to how to end up, when you get to the final project, how to actually organize your written assignment from that. So let's start out with the overview. And I'm going to read it. In this course, you're going to select one of the 4 components. I already told you what they were in your written assignment. Those components of the correctional system are parole, probation, jail, or prison. Nothing else. So you're going to use a probation officer, a probation organization, a parole officer or parole organization. You're going to use a jail or a person who works in the jail also, and the jail itself, and or prison. That's it. Period. And if you want to know some questions, I'm going to always refer you back to this recording and tell you to pay close attention to what I said in the open house. Very, very, very important. So it is very important that you, first of all, schedule an in-person interview so that you can learn about the field. And if you can tour the agency facility, that's great. But some agencies don't allow that. And so to accommodate you, it is important for you to be aware, and I know somebody's going to ask me, an in-person interview is optimal, but telephone interviews are acceptable with prior instruction approval. I'm giving it right now, instructor approval. It's given now. I'm approving it for everybody, so don't ask me. Okay? You'll have some interview questions. Don't ask me where the interview questions are, because they're going to be right here. And they're going to help you explore the interests that you need for your interview. You don't have to make up but 3 interview questions. 5 of them are going to be given to you. You'll conduct research into the background of the agency, and you will find out that that generally is by checking the website of that organization or one of those kind of things. So the agency that you're going to use, and then the person who you're going to interview there. So I'm just showing you how by the transferable skills, how it incorporates in this project. So you're going to display your competency in written communication, in reading and oral communication, because you're going to be talking to people or a person and asking questions. It's going to be a professional manner when you conduct the interview. Go dressed as if you are conducting an interview, not like you're on the beach or casual. Go dressed to impress, as if you're applying for a position. Use effective grammar, punctuation, spelling, and so forth in your final interview report, and also in your other reports as well that are prior to that. There are many resources available to help you, and your resources tab, I already told you where you find that information, along with, again, the website for the organization. Diversity and teamwork. So these are the next two. The next one. Through your interview questions, you develop an understanding of how to work with people from various backgrounds and perspectives. So now let's talk about the due dates. Notice that your final project will be due in week 9. Don't get relaxed, because you have assignments along the way. And this is roughly the schedule. Now you see today, this is week 1. It's not highlighted, so therefore it's not an assignment. But in week 2, you're going to select the agency and contact person. Now in the module, it's going to tell you what specifics and the rubric that you need to complete for this assignment. Then week 4, agency overview and background. You're going to do that probably by doing some research on the agency that you have selected. And don't tell me it's about jails. Tell me a specific jail. Tell me a specific prison. Tell me a specific probation or parole agency, and the background information. And you're going to satisfy the APA requirements as well in that, and the page requirements as well. Interview report. This is where you're going to use the interview questions that I'm about to show you in just a few minutes. And then week 9, your final submission. Now, I'm going to suggest to you up front that you think about this and listen to what I'm about to say. And again, that's why it's important that you listen, pay attention to this session. Each week's assignment, I recommend to you that you save a category for your final paper, and you call it agency contact person selection or something like that. And then under it, put the information that you have taken from that week. The same thing with this. That'll help you organize your papers better. Students don't hear me. One of the reasons students don't hear me is because they don't look at what I'm doing here. I'm tedious with this. And then finally, week 7. In week 7 interview report, you're going to find something different from any requirements regarding APA that I'm not going to talk to you about, but you're going to complete your interview report. And then the final submission, it tells you some additional things to add to what you got right here, and then you'll have your paper. Now, here are the interview overview questions. These are the required questions. My recommendation is put numbers next to them and separate paragraphs, and then answer the questions. Don't give me yes or no open-ended questions. These are open-ended. Notice what it says. What are the minimum requirements to be hired for your position? And then listen to what the person is saying. Write the information down, and then you're going to cite that person as the source of that information. Number 2, what is a typical day in your position? Notice none of these are yes or no answers. Number 3, what are the favorite and least favorite parts of your position? You're going to be operating your communication skills and write those in detail. Don't give me a one-liner or a two-liner. What is the biggest challenge of working collaboratively with people from diverse backgrounds and perspectives faced today? That person will provide that information, and you include that. And then finally, what are the possible solutions to the challenges that have been provided by the individual? This would be the basis of your final conclusion section of your project too. So you'll take this question and answer it, but you'll also take the details and use it at the end of your final project. Not copying and pasting it, but using it. You'll see how it works. Then, in addition to these, there are 3 required questions. There's a minimum of 3 questions that you choose. Do the same thing. Make sure they're open-ended, not yes or no answers, and so forth, and you're going to include it. So you're going to have 8 questions at a minimum. I don't care if you do 10, 15, but do the 8. Then you're going to conduct research in the selected agency. This is really going to be for week 4. And you're going to provide this information as much as available. It is so important that you provide as much of this information that you can research. The mission statement and functions of the organization are very critical because it tells us about what that mission is of that organization. And you can get that information from most of the time their websites, or you can include that as one of your minimum questions as well, so that you'll have that information so that when you do week 4, you'll provide that information. Okay? Now this up here is for week 7, okay? And these are required. This is for week 4. All right? So notice that in week 4, you want to have this information, but by the time you have actually gotten that information, you won't need to use it for week 7. But I'm just letting you know that that's information that you can use. Ethics and professional responsibility. Again, you identify these as transferable skills, and it tells you what you're doing as you conduct your interviews and conducting the project. And then digital fluency, it tells you, what you're doing as far as that's concerned, using APA guidelines and so forth. And then information, using relevant information according to what the project calls for. And remember, your project needs to be credible. For example, again, it reminds you Wikipedia is not credible. Okay? And so evaluate your resources. And I told you the best way to get good resources is through your learning library and learning center. Each of these assignments will be graded independently. And I'll provide specific grading criteria for each of these assignments because there's a rubric for each one. And then if you have any other questions, ask me, but you really shouldn't because I've covered them. If there's some that I haven't covered, ask me. Put the details to your questions in the general course questions, and you will be able to have me answer those, or someone else can answer them. And then this is basically down here the tutoring guide and so forth. But this is the course project. I've already given it to you. These are the parameters. If you follow these, you will be successful, and you should be aware that your final submission is 100 points. A lot of points. So you want to, again, recapping what I said, use the topics that you use for week 2 and separate them. Don't run them together. I get some of these papers sometimes. I don't know what section that you're in when you write your paper because you're jumping all over the place. Good organization is important, and that's going to be something that you want to develop for the reader as well. And then the overview. Remember, when you look at this, it's going to look like it's a short bit of information, but actually I want you to elaborate on that information when you do provide it in week 4. And then interview report based on the questions that I've outlined, the 5 and then the 3 that you come up with. And then your final submission, week 9, it tells you what to add to that. And then you'll be finished with the project. So I've answered everything that you might have concerning that. And so it's 10 o'clock now. I should be stopping, but I'm going to take the next 20 minutes or half hour to share something with you that's very valuable to me, and I think it'll be very valuable to you in the end. So let's go back to the course home and remind you what I'm getting ready to do. Is that at the end of these announcements for week 1, you'll see adversity is a springboard to success. And I'm going to talk to you about that in specifics right now. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to go back in to this classroom. Okay, this person in here obviously is not able to hear and probably has left because of the fact that they didn't click on the audio as I put in here to be able to hear. So here we are. Adversity to springboard success is my life, and it's something that I understand that everybody has, but to different degrees. Here's my story. When I was 7 years old, 1957, my dad took me to a baseball game. When my dad took me to that game, we went to see the White Sox. My dad loved the White Sox. And so when we went there, that Memorial Day, which in that time was May 30th, every year May 30th was celebration of Memorial Days. In recent times, it's the last Monday in May. So at that time, on this day, my dad and I went to the game, came home. People in our house had celebrated. They were drinking, playing cards, they were partying and barbecuing and so forth. Well, it came time to put the kids to bed, me being the oldest 7-year-old boy, and I had 5 younger sisters. We were all in one bedroom sharing. That's where we slept. We had bunk beds in there and rollaway beds. And so the truth of the matter is that at that time, my mom and dad had 6 kids. All right. So sometime during that night, a fight broke out in the house. And the fight ended up in the bedroom where we were sleeping. And someone turned on the lights. And my father and a man who they had rented a room to by the name of Scott, Webster Scott, that's his name. I couldn't for years say his name, not for legal reasons, but I just couldn't get it out of my mouth. But now I'm okay. And I used to cry more when I talk about it, but I don't much more now because this is to encourage somebody else. So the fight took place, and the man took out a knife before my eyes and stabbed my dad in the forehead. The knife opened up a wound, and blood was gushing down his face. I'll never forget it because I have a photographic memory. I could close my eyes and I can revisit that room like it happened yesterday. And so the man ran out of the room, and the next thing I knew, the police came in, took my dad off on a stretcher, and the knife was still in his head, and they took him out. A few days later, my dad died, and a few days later, this man appeared back in the house. I don't know where he was those few days. But he appeared back, and this time now he was sleeping not in his room, but he was sleeping with my mother openly. He did not go to jail because I would find out years later that the case was dismissed because they said that there was no evidence and that he actually was operating in self-defense and that my father was the aggressor, which wasn't true. But the only witnesses to that were the man who did it. My dad, obviously, he couldn't say anything, and us children, and my mother, who was the one that turned on the light. But she loved this guy, and so basically it was, I would just say, a cover-up, and the guy didn't go to jail. So after that, the man proceeded to sleep in the bed with my mom. For the next 5 years, from 57 to 62, my mother was the victim of domestic abuse, domestic violence by this man. He beat her profusely, and I would have to rub witch hazel on her, and which to this day, if I open up some witch hazel, tears come out of my eyes, not because of the witch hazel, but because of the what happens. It triggers. It's a trigger. So anyway, this man would go to jail, and my mother would go back and get him and bring him back. If you ever take domestic violence in this program, you will discover there's a thing called cycle of abuse. And that cycle of abuse has to do with individuals doing something wrong, making up with that person, doing something wrong again, making up with that person, and it keeps going on and on and on. And it's the abuse is based on power. And so anyway, the bottom line was my mom kept putting up with this man. So the area that we lived in started to change over. The gangs started coming in, but the gangs wouldn't bother me because at that time the gangs were different than they are today. They agreed that they wouldn't recruit me because they knew I had lost my dad, and so it was getting tough. And so my mom decided that we would move from the house. It was a 2-flat that she owned with my dad, and we moved into a single-family home in Gary, Indiana in 1962 in the summer. And when we moved there, an aunt from Michigan came and stayed with us, and she was a pretty tough character. She was kind of like the Tyler Perry character, Medea, and she didn't tolerate nonsense. So there were no beatings that took place. And so my mom, with a cousin of ours, began operating a barbecue restaurant in downtown Gary at the time that we shortly after we moved into the house. And so this was the first time, good people, that I had my own bedroom because by this time my mom had 2 more kids. These last 2 were from this man. The 5 I told you previously were from my father. And so anyway, so I just had 7 sisters at that time. So we go ahead and spin ahead to 1963, Memorial Day, May 30th. And we had people over and, had the same kind of thing, enjoying the day. And at the end of the day, my mom told me she was leaving and left me in charge of the house and that she was going to go to the restaurant. And so I found myself in a situation where I was in charge of the house, as normally I was, as frequently. Let me get rid of this. And so I found myself where as a head watching over the kids as the oldest one. So we went to bed that night. I cleaned up the kitchen and woke up early the next morning to smoke in the house. And I got up and I opened the door, back door, to let the smoke out. And when I opened the door, the car pulled off from the driveway that my mother and Scott shared. And so I didn't think nothing of it. I went and looked at her bed. She hadn't slept in it, but that wasn't unusual because there were times when she would stay gone and I would be in charge of the house. And so anyway, sometime during that day, that and I discovered that the reason why the smoke took place, someone had turned on the oven. I would find out later that the person who turned it on was Scott, and he came back to turn it on because he was trying to get rid of us. Well, anyway, sometime during that day, 2 policemen showed up at the house in plainclothes, detectives from Gary, and they came in. I let them in after they identified themselves, and they announced that my mother was found dead in the city of Chicago on the south side. I immediately lost it, started screaming and hollering, and I called the name, Scott, Scott, Scott. But then I quickly looked around and saw that my sisters were like, oh, and I told you the baby was very young. And so, in fact, I was playing with her on the floor on a blanket at the time. So I had to gather my wits. And then what happened after that is an aunt, my mother's sister, not the one that, by the way, the one from from Michigan, she had left before Memorial Day to go back home. So anyway, another aunt, another one of their sisters, came and picked us up, took us to her house in Chicago. She told us we were going to stay there temporarily and that they were going to end up splitting us up and sending us to various places, which was not, we had been always together. So this was problematic. And so anyway, she also told us that we were going to earn our keep, and we ended up having to scrub floors, clean walls. Now I was the oldest one, and I was 13 years old, and we had to. It was just a tough situation. Aside from the fact that my mom, when I saw her at the wake, I lost it because she looked like she was asleep, and I couldn't go to the funeral, and someone had to stay home with me. I never even went to the burial itself. So anyway, we stayed in the house with that aunt. Well, the aunt from Michigan found out about what the other aunt was planning on doing, and she came and she put a stop to that and says, no, I'm taking all 8 of them. And there we're going to have a house built. Her and her husband had a house built in, not in a suburb, but in the further south side area called Maple Park in the Morgan Park area of Chicago. So I completed my 7th grade in on the south side while living at that aunt's house, and then moved to the house that she had built, all 8 of us, and her husband. And when we moved there, things didn't get better for me because of the fact that my aunt and uncle wanted to adopt everybody, and I didn't want to be adopted because I wanted to keep my name. And at that time, I didn't know that you could have kept your name. But the other issue was I didn't get along with her husband, and I didn't want him listed on my birth certificate as father. So what ended up happening without my knowledge is that I was illegally adopted and didn't know that. Even I didn't find out until I was 34 years old, had gone through and got married the first time, had children, graduated from high school, and obtained a driver's license, all that stuff. And so I found myself in a situation where I wanted to get my name back, and I'll talk about that a little later. So going back to living in that house, this man and my aunt would get into it all the time. They were drinkers, and it was just smoking, and it was just bad. And they both carried guns, and guns were pulled out, and so anyway, the guns were pulled out, and when those guns were pulled out, we were exposed to violence there as well. Not the domestic violence beatings like my mom, but there was some dangerous situations. So I spent a lot of time out of the house in the community, spent a lot of time at the community church, and I formed a relationship with many people in the community out there. I had a paper route, and I actually ended up working at McDonald's as well while in high school. So I was active and so anyway, going back, I'm jumping around. Going back to when we first moved there, I went through 8th grade in the area, a school called Shoup School. While I was attending Shoup, this was in '64, and I graduated in '65, I would find out that Scott pled guilty and that he was sentenced to 10 years. Well, 10 years back in those days meant 5 for good behavior, and I further discovered that for further good behavior, he would serve 3½ years. That was troubling to me. And so when I get troubled, I ask questions, and finally someone told me there's these people called lawyers who deal with this. So I went to where I could find out some information to school and asked the librarian at the grammar school I was attending, and she gave me a book that I checked out and took it home and read it cover to cover in one night and told all about attorneys and lawyers. The next day, anybody I met, people from that point on, I said, my name is Richard Wright, and I'm going to be a lawyer. And so soon as I announced that, my aunt that told us she was going to split us up, tried to discourage me. She told the aunt that I was staying with to try to tell me don't go that way because I didn't have what it takes, and none of us kids had what it takes. Now she had kids that had her and her husband, and she said they were more refined and they were smarter and would be more educated. Not so. I never responded to that with words. I responded with actions. And so what ended up happening is that I found myself going through the period where I got tired of dealing with my aunt's situation with my uncle and with him. And by the way, I would later find out years and years later that my uncle was actually sexually assaulting my sister. So he was a pedophile. And so anyway, I ended up reaching the stage where I, as I said, spent a lot of time out. And so at the time I was living, I wanted a mother. I wanted someone. So I heard this lady on the radio, and I went and found her and asked her to be my mother. And we became friends. And then she stayed in my life as a mentor all the way until '84 when she legally adopted me to help me get my name straight again. So anyway, that's a whole side story. But back to the adversity. So the church that I was active in, I was helping clean up that church. They decided that they would give me a 4-year all-paid scholarship, but it required my guardians to sign. My uncle put a stop to it. At that point, I said, okay. I was about a junior in high school, at Fanger High School. I said, okay, no disrespect to anybody, but I'm going to still accomplish this. So I told my aunt that when I graduated, at that time I would be 19 years old, have just turned 19. I graduated in June of '69, turned 19 May 3rd, '69, that I was going to move out, because she announced that she was leaving that house and moving into the city in a tough area, and and renting that house out. So some of my friends talked to their parents and allowed me to come and stay with them. So what I did was I graduated from high school and moved in with my friends. At the same time, I registered in junior college at a school called Loop College, which is Harold Washington City Colleges of Chicago. And then I began operating there, and I started that in the fall of 1969. At the same time, my friend's mother knew someone who was a secretary to a law firm downtown and got me a job in their mailroom. So I was on my way, but I was a messenger and people laughed. But I went to work dressed with a shirt and tie on. That wasn't a requirement, but I did that because I wanted to present myself in a professional fashion. You heard me talking about this earlier. And so as a result of that, I took packages to various individuals. One of the persons I took a package to that was impressed with the way I dressed was a gentleman by the name of Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc, in case you don't know the name, was the chairman and founder of the McDonald's Corporation. And he shared with me many, many hours as I became his favorite messenger, and I spent a lot of hours talking to him. So then I ended up working in that mailroom, and then I would have to, I'd take 2 buses to get to work and school, and then I would take a train, L train, downtown. And I'd have to be at work at 8:30, and then I would get off at 4 and have to be in classes, which I carried 12 to 14 hours. So I generally carried 3 to 4 courses every semester. It wasn't quarters then. And I had books because there was no digital stuff. I had paper. So I had all this heavy stuff, and I still carried it. And so, good people, I stayed on the dean's list and the honor roll throughout my whole high school, I mean not high school, but college career. So anyway, I decided in 1970 to get married in March. And I got married, which would make it even tougher. So young lady I had been dating, and I got married, and I moved out of my friend's place and moved into my own apartment, which was very small. And here's what happened. She started school at Chicago State, study as a teacher, and I was in junior college studying what they call pre-law at that time. And then I ended up, working in the job. And so here's what happened. In 71, one child came. It was a girl. 72, a second child came. It was a girl. And so the Vietnam War was going on, and they were trying to draft me into the military, but I got exempted from it and deferred because of me being the only surviving male, because you know the history I told you. My dad died when I was 7, and there were no other males. So I ended up continuing in school. So I continued working at the law firm. The law firm, by the way, when I got there, I introduced myself and let them know I was going to be a lawyer. They began to take me seriously because the next thing they did was promoted me to a file clerk in their law firm. And then they promoted me to a law librarian when something happened to the law librarian. I was really moving forward then. And by this time, I was ready to leave the junior college, and I applied to Roosevelt University, a 4-year institution, declaring my major to be political science and minoring in business, specifically accounting. And so I continued to do well. I continued to stay on the dean's list and honor roll. I found myself again studying on the bus, the train, the L. With the schedule I told you, I went to classes on Saturdays as well. And so I did well there. So when I was at the law firm and I was law librarian, I taught myself how to do legal research and demonstrated to the lawyers that I did that. And what they decided to do was to get someone to be my assistant in the library and turn me into what's now called a paralegal. At that time, they called it a law clerk. And I did that. In the meantime, it was time for me to go to law school. I took the law school admission test, LSAT. Didn't do too well because I had trouble with the standardized tests. And so anyway, I had decided what school I wanted to go to, which was Northwest University School of Law. And I made it clear that that's what I wanted to do. Well, immediately it was brought to my attention that people apply to at least 3 schools. I said, I'm not applying to 3 schools. I wasn't arrogant. I wasn't cocky. I was confident. And I applied to Northwestern University School of Law. Now, the application was not very thick. But when I finished my package, I put in supporting documents, statements. I had letters of reference from the lawyers and from various other individuals who supported, saying that I would be a good candidate to be a law student and future lawyer. My file was about this thick, and so I had it hand delivered. So it was already clear, based on the processes, that Northwest University had 250 seats available, and they had thousands applying for those seats. But you know what? I was determined that I was going to get one of those seats. So the law school did something that they didn't normally do, and they called me up and asked me to come to the law school to talk to me about that package that they received. So I did. And they put me in a room, and there were 4 people who talked to me and asked me various questions, and I answered those questions for them. So I found myself at the end of that waiting for about an hour, and they came back, and they said, well, we enjoyed what you said. We appreciate. We think you're a young man who's going places, but we don't make decisions to admit students in this fashion. So they said, but what we will tell you, and this is kind of funny, is they said, we will tell you that you will receive some written correspondence from us in the next couple of weeks that I think you'll like. Well, that was their informal way of telling me that I was accepted, and 2 weeks later I got the letter of acceptance. So it was great. So I ended up graduating from the law school, from Roosevelt University in June of '75 with honors, with all kind of awards. There were articles in the newspaper written about me. The governor of the state of Illinois gave me an award that the school had me to represent them out of 5,000 students. So I was on my way. So I get to the law school and start classes. Incidentally, my wife I was married to at that time graduated at the same time from Chicago State University with a teaching degree, and she began working as a teacher for Chicago Public Schools. Well, I started classes, and it was made clear to me that I had to leave my job with the law firm because the first year of law school was very strenuous. They didn't have night classes or any of those things. So I ended up, depending on the income that my wife earned as a teacher. So the program being very strenuous, I was doing pretty good, and then all of a sudden something happened that had not happened in the history of Chicago Public Schools. And what happened was there was a teachers' strike, and the teachers went on strike. And when they went on strike, good people, what happened is that we lost income. Well, you know that increased my stress level, and we lost, we couldn't pay for the light, the gas, or any of those kinds. Well, you didn't have to pay gas because we were in an apartment. The light bill, so the power was out. So I had to study by candlelight. We didn't have money for food, so we ate out of canned goods. So we took the two girls, which I had at that time, and sent them to their grandmother, which lived close by. And they would come home, but they also stayed with her as well. So she helped us out with that. In the meantime, the stressor became so bad that I told one of my instructors, who is still currently at the law school, Dr. Joyce Hughes is her name. I told her, I said that I'm going to have to take a leave of absence from the school. She said, before you do that, come to my office. And she took me to her office, and I sat down, and she stood in front of the door. There's only one way in and one way out other than the windows. And she said, Richard, I'm not letting you out of this room until you agree that you're going to ride this out. I will help you. I don't have money, but I will help you to focus. So she was very diligent. So I took her up on it, and I ended up, of course, finishing up on time. The strike ended after about 2 months or so, and so pressure started leaving me, and I was able to concentrate even more on my law school course in that first year, and I made it through the first year. And then I was able the second year to go back and work during the summer at the law firm. And then I worked a few hours during my second year of law school while I was still in law school at the law firm as well. So anyway, I found myself while in law school, classmates. One of my classmates introduced me to his father, who was a distinguished criminal defense lawyer who would later become a judge. And he invited me to the house with several other young law students, and we sat around a table, and his dad would, drill us and teach us how to be good lawyers. Well, after they left, I shared with him and his wife my experiences of growing up, and he said, you need closure. So what he did was he took me to the criminal courts building, which is called the Layton Court building today at 26 in California in Chicago, took me downstairs and had them to pull the files, and I received copies of the details of the files concerning my father's case in '57 and my mother's case in '63. And then he began to talk to me, and he offered me some sound advice. He says, I know you want to be a lawyer, he says, but I recommend a criminal defense lawyer. Now that's going to sounds like a tough thing to do after what I went through. But I respected this man. And I did. I took him up on it, and I decided that would be the path that I would take. So I was working still at the law firm, which was not a criminal law firm. They were corporate law, but they also did some what they call pro bono or free criminal cases. So I would, work with some of those lawyers in those. At any rate, I found myself going to the law firm in 1980 and deciding I'm going to leave after 2 years and start working with some other lawyers and start living my dream of being a criminal defense lawyer. So I did. I started doing that. But I didn't like the ethics of the individual, so I started my own practice and hired people to work for me. And I ended up really burning like wildfire, taking off because of the fact that I did radio. I had a radio show that was developed called Know Your Rights, and rights was spelled W-R-I-G-H-T-S. My law office phone number was 974-4487, which spelled W-R-I-G-H-T-S. And I did that. And at the same time, I was representing individuals in criminal cases, and my jury verdict percentile of not guilty was in the high 90s. So I was pretty good. I was able to connect with people because I could communicate, speak, tell a story. Also, I was well trained at Northwestern Law School, how to put the case together, how to represent people, that I learned through my various classes that I took. So I ended up working that. In the meantime, by the way, back up. When I graduated from law school, 78, my third daughter was born. She's now 41, and by the way, she's a Rasmussen graduate, most recently graduating in February with a degree in, with a certificate in medical billing and coding. So anyway, my other daughters, they had gone on to school and decided they would become whatever they decided after graduating from college. So they got married, had their kids, and so forth and so on. Well, let me back up. I'm jumping ahead of myself. When they were still in high school, my wife, the two were in high school, and the one was in grammar. My wife and I parted company because we were growing apart. And so I ended up moving out of the house, and we ended up getting a divorce. And I found myself, doing well financially, taking care of my family, and at the same time, I found myself, and it's interesting, my kids went to a high school called Kenwood Academy, and one of their classmates was a gentleman, a young man who's now in the news now. His name was Robert Kelly, but yes, B.R. Kelly, and he was having troubles even back then. So anyway, that's a little digression, but I ended up doing pretty well with that. And so I found myself dealing with representing people in various areas. Not only did I do criminal law, but I did entertainment, I did sports. I used to travel with the Chicago White Sox, and I represented some of the guys in brief, not as an agent, but just answering legal questions for them and so forth. So I used to travel throughout the country with them and stay in a hotel and go to the various ballparks. So I was doing pretty good. I was working with entertainers. I worked a little bit with the Jacksons. I worked with the Stylistics. I knew the Motown people as well. So I was involved in a lot of neat stuff. So I found myself going to seminary, 91 to 93, and became a minister. And I didn't obtain my degree fully because I didn't complete a paper, but I got the knowledge. So here I was, this lawyer who was a preacher, and I became known as the preaching lawyer because I would always use as God is my witness in my cases, as in my arguments that I'd present. So anyway, I was doing well with that, and I met a young lady, and she introduced me to her church, and I ended up being her lawyer, and then we started dating, and then we got married in '88. And 2 years later, a child was born. So I now had 4 daughters by 1990. That second wife that I had, her mother became the village president or mayor of a tough town called Ford Heights. So she invited me to be her village attorney, which I took, and village prosecutor. I then said, well, you know what? I'm not taking this job unless I can carry a gun. So it was brought to my attention that I had to go to the academy, which I did, took classes, and became a part-time police officer. I went through extensive training, classes, and I also worked the streets. I never wore a uniform. I wore plain clothes. I had shoulder holster, and I ended up working also the drug raids and things like that, like cops you see on television. The traffic roadblocks, I did those as well, searching cars, stopping cars if they didn't comply for traffic stops. I did all of that. And then it became clear that the chief of police was involved in some unsavory activities, so he was asked to step down and a new chief came in. Well, he determined that I was clean and asked me to be his internal affairs investigator, and I did. So I became an investigator as well. So I ended up finding myself in a situation where I had done all of this stuff. So remember now, I was a criminal defense lawyer. I became a police officer, part-time prosecutor, investigator. I was a paralegal. So I've done all of those things. So anyway, 89 to 93, I was in those roles in Ford Heights. So it became clear to me in 93 that there was a problem going on with my wife and our pastor, who I joined their church and became the armor bearer, or one of the armor bearers for this pastor. I found out that she and my former pastor were doing their thing, and so I ended up getting out of that marriage, and I found myself really hurt, but I continued moving forward, and my interest in being a lawyer started to diminish, and so I started slowing down in my practice, and I continued representing people in various areas. I had people working for me to do the other things other than the criminal cases, and I handled those exclusively. But some of my people working for me messed up those cases, and guess who was on the front line? Yes, I was. But anyway, ultimately, I found myself in a situation where I met a young lady in 94, and we became friends, and she and I got married July 28, 1994. Well, I told her that I was winding down my law and that probably in a few years I'd be done. And so I was taking very few cases. So she and I ended up having our first child born, which is a boy, and you see him in that profile in 94. And then after that, we had a daughter who was born in early 2000, and a son that was born later, almost to 2001. So they were almost like overlap in terms of their ages. And then 2008, we have our baby girl. And so anyway, I ended up announcing that I completely retired from law, gave up my license to practice in 2000. And I started doing various things like running a janitorial company for a company called Service Merchandise. I became the head for the Illinois stores, 26 stores, managing their operations. And then I started doing teaching and special education with at-risk youth, and I did that. And then I started doing closings for title companies where people were refinancing their houses. And all of that went on until we reached the stage where we bought a house in '99, and then we moved out of that house in 2011 after my wife lost her mom, and we moved to an area near Plainfield in Romeoville, Illinois. At that same time, someone brought to my attention that there was a school that was looking for an adjunct professor to teach business law. That school was Rasmussen College. I had never heard of Rasmussen, and I did research on it, and I found out that the school was credible because of the fact that the chairman of the board of directors was the former president of Northwestern University, not the School of Law, but the whole university, and he was emeritus. So I took the job and teaching residentially business law October 1st, 2011, which, as I said yesterday, I celebrated 8 years to the day that I've been teaching there. So after I started teaching there, it was residentially. It was brought to my attention that they were going to be going online with classes. Well, I then brought to their attention that I was a criminal justice person, and they moved me into the criminal justice department as an adjunct instructor, and I began teaching adjunct classes and residentially. And then in 2013, it went online. The program went completely online, so I began to learn the systems of teaching online classes. I had never done it, but I'm pretty good at it now. But I'm a person who, whenever a challenge comes, I stay at it. And that's why I tell you I understand challenges. So anyway, I did that, continued doing closings part-time as well. In the meantime, 2014, an opening came for a full-time position of State Program Coordinator of the School of Justice Studies. I applied, and yes, I got it. And I became responsible for the Criminal Justice Program in Illinois, at Rasmussen's Romeoville, Tinley Park, Mokena campus, Aurora campus, and the Rockford campus. And so I did that until 2015 when they changed my load. I had been teaching 3 classes, and then I had 2 preps for School of Justice Studies coordinator. So in 2015 they changed that and said that they're no longer going to have program coordinators for the states, and so we became full-time professors. Well, what I then took on the role, started teaching criminal justice online, again, continuing, and I was then what they call an associate professor, and then the next year I became assistant professor, and then a couple years ago I became a professor, Dr. Richard Wright, Professor, School of Justice Studies, and that's where I am now. And so I continued doing that and meeting students and helping students the same way that I do now, and letting students know about the story that I just shared with you, so that you understand that the motto that I started sharing with students back even when I started teaching part-time was adversity is the springboard to success. And I'm living proof of that. And so therefore, I'm with you guys for the next 11 weeks. Many students that I have, they continue to reach out to me after graduation. I respond. I help students. I write letters of recommendation. I talk to employers on behalf of former students. I also have mentored several students above and beyond, and I do anything to achieve student success to help you guys. I am tough, but I am also forthright, and I don't look at myself as being your professor and your student. I look at us as being a team. I look at it like I'm the coach and you're the players, and we together will be victorious and help you to get student success. And so I encourage you to understand that I have a three-tier approach. My goal is to produce educated, ethical, and professional criminal justice individuals. And so you've heard everything you need to hear. I know I went longer than I said, but I had to take the time. This is a very lengthy first week. Next week, it won't be as lengthy. And I do encourage you to remember everything that I said. Again, piggybacking on the course project, I have everything from A to Z that you need to know with that. I've actually given you everything from A to Z that you need to know to be successful in the next 11 weeks. But please, whatever you do, take the time to listen to the live lectures. And so with this, I'm going to say good night to you, and I hope to see many of you, more of you, next week when we begin our week 2 lecture. So have a good evening. Good night.